We're talking defensive backs on today's Peacock and Williamson, ranking the top 5 and beyond cornerbacks and safeties for the 2025 NFL Draft right now.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look at the NFL on the field and in the front office with elite breakdowns to next-level analysis and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Love our everydayers. It's good to have you with us. Hit the thumbs up if you're on YouTube. Let us know you stopped by. And if you're new to the program, welcome. We're breaking down the entire league daily here on the Locked On Podcast Network throughout the draft. I'm sure there's going to be some big trades and free agent signings still to come. And all the news, we've got you covered daily. So subscribe on YouTube and everywhere you listen to your podcasts. And today's edition of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by FanDuel. And right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets. And all you got to do is win your first $5 bet. Just go to FanDuel.com to get started. Here we go. DBs, defensive backs, finishing up the defensive portion of your top fives. And of course, folks can find the write-ups at Steelers.com from you, Matt. And these are your rankings. I'm going to throw in my 2 cents with these, and then we'll talk about some other sleepers and some honorable mentions to your top fives with these two position groups with cornerback and safety. And the first thing that stands out to me with the cornerback group, Matt, is it's not top heavy in man coverage guys, because the two guys that everyone's talking about at the top, their best work as far as outside corners go in Will Johnson and Jahdae Barron. I don't know exactly what your ranking is. That's kind of the consensus of you guys right now. They're both sort of better in zone than man, and that's what their tape says about him. And for Jahdae Barron, maybe even not even an outside corner. He's more of a nickel safety. So what group is Jahdae Barron even in for you?
Yeah, and real quick, I mean, I don't know if you agree or not, and I'm sure the Niners are doing a lot of corner research. I think it's a below average safety class. Not that it ever like blows your doors off, but it's strong at the top. And there's a couple guys I like. The corner class, I would say, is middle of the road if you're going to do like position ranks in this draft. I mean, I like a lot of guys. I think deep into day 2, you'll get quality corner prospects. But it does seem like almost every one of the corners at the top has some question. You know, like none of them are clean, you know?
No. And it's partly what the college game is giving us too.
Yeah.
You start, and that's one of my pet peeves when you put on the tape and you're trying to scout college players for the NFL. And it's like, can you run a stinking route? Like, these tunnel wide receiver screens are not helping me learn anything about either the wide receivers or the DBs or the quarterback or the offensive line. Like, can we get some real football played here that we can evaluate on tape? And so I think that's kind of what's happening with a lot of this too. And, a lot of college teams are like, well, it's too hard to match up man to man with what's going on with the offenses. So we're going to play a whole lot of zone. And so that's what you see. So even more projection, I think, than normal years as far as the defensive backs go in this class. And everyone seems to have like that one negative where I'm not sure. And even Will Johnson at the combine was a little bit smaller than you thought he was going to be. Not that he's small, but thought he was 6'2", 200 pounds. It was kind of like, a little shorter arms and 6'1". It's like, okay, that's fine. Good size still. But then still no 40 time for him. And he didn't even run at the Michigan Pro Day either. So he's going to have to be, a late addition to the 40-yard dash party. And if he doesn't run a 40-yard dash before the draft, I don't know how you feel comfortable drafting him in the top 10, 15 picks either, where he's projected to go.
Perfect example. Yeah. Yep. A perfect example. And quick story. So when I got hired as a scout for the Browns, what I recall, the first day or 3 was spent going position room by position room, talking to our linebackers coach, our D-line coach, and spending an hour or so with each one, just saying, what do you really want? What do you want me to find you when I'm on the road? What's important to our scheme? Coach me up so I can find you the best players. And the first thing the receiver coach, first thing the corner coach said is, watch every possible snap you can of press man coverage, because you might get none. You might get 12, like at the college level. Like anything you can see in man coverage, watch as much of it as you possibly can. And not that the league is 80% man, but it's 40 or 45. I mean, a lot of these guys don't ever play it or go up against it.
And that's the thing that gets you drafted high. And in this class, it's hard to find the guys that are like, here we go, press man. This is your guy. It's like, does that even exist? Like, would you be completely shocked if like 0 corners went in the first round? I don't think that's what's going to happen, but there might only be like 1 and maybe 2 potentially.
And then a flood in round 2.
Yeah, exactly.
I can live with the questions then, or, I'm not going to lose my job because I missed some. Right.
It's how deep some of the other, classes are in offensive line or especially the defensive line. It might just be like 90% of the first round is defensive linemen of all shapes and sizes. And then everyone else is like, all right, let's see what else we got for these other positions now in round 2.
You might be right. And the one guy I know is going in round 1, and it's the same for the receiver ranks, is I didn't even put Hunter on either one because I think he's such a clear number 1 receiver and corner. I wanted to get to number 5 so I could at least discuss another guy in my top 5, So I just scored him on both.
Travis Hunter in a different stratosphere. He's going in the top 3, and so you kind of know if you're drafting after, say, the New England Patriots is 4, you have 0 shot to get Travis Hunter. That's where he's going to go. Best corner, best wide receiver in the class just because of his raw tools. And there's actually still work to be done for him as a player at both positions, I think. And who knows? We'll see which one he ends up playing the most in the NFL. But, a freaky guy. So a really fun prospect. So beyond Travis Hunter, who's CB1 clearly in this class, what do you see?
I went with Will Johnson, mostly based off of the national title 2023 tape, which it's kind of like Stingley. Remember Stingley is like an 18-year-old, and then COVID hit. He won the national title with Jamar Chase and Burrow, and then we didn't see him for a while. I at least know it's in the player. And I'm not saying he's as talented as Stingley, but he was a force in 2023.
And the injury thing is interesting with Will Johnson because it's been a long time. Like he shut it down the second half of the season, and it was like, okay, well, so he'll be ready for the combine and everything. He's not quite ready for the combine. Is it also a situation where he knows he's going to run slow and he's just trying to get every 100th of a second he can on that stopwatch? And then I had this conversation with Eric Crocker, Locked On 49ers, because I see Will Johnson sometimes mocked to the 49ers at 11. And by the way, in your mock drafts, don't put a corner at 11. Niners don't draft DBs high. In 8 years, the Niners have drafted a total of 2 defensive backs in the top 85 picks. And they were both at the very end of the second round or top of the third round. So 64 is the highest DB the Niners have drafted in 8 years. And they have, too many other needs to fry. And they've got starting corners this year. That's a side note, just to help you out in your mock drafts. And, obviously anything can happen. You never say never in the NFL draft because it's a wild, wacky thing. But for someone like Will Johnson to go in the top 10 and the tape is good, how fast does he have to run for you? Because, you might even get you might need to bump it up because of the hand time and not the laser time at the combine. Like 4.49 would be good at the combine, but does that mean you got to be 4.45 or faster with the hand time when he does finally run? Like what do you need to see from him to like really cement that number 1 corner spot after Travis Hunter?
I would say anything under 4.5 flat is probably still my number 1 because I don't think anyone, Barron's my 2, and I think he's a really good football player, but they're really different football players. I guess the better question is, could Johnson be in play at 5 or 6? Because Jacksonville and the Raiders could sure use a number 1 corner. What would he have to do to be getting that conversation?
So here's the thing. Everybody was comping Will Johnson to Patrick Surtain, big corner. People have been talking about him for years at Michigan. He's the next great cornerback. And I put on the tape and I was like, he's not Patrick Surtain. In fact, what he is to me, my comp for him was Richard Sherman. So you want to talk about
cover 3
cornerback, right? And Pete Carroll showed that he's willing to draft the cornerback high because that's kind of been the thing. They draft their long zone corners later in the draft, but he drafted Witherspoon. It picked 5 a couple years ago. Head coach of the Seahawks. So Will Johnson to the Raiders is an interesting one because I think the fit is awesome for Pete Carroll's style of defense, and he's definitely that type of guy. Play a little off man, play a little cover 3 zone. That's really where Will Johnson shines. So I love that fit.
Attack the football. So on Barron, I wonder if the success of Brian Branch, Cooper DeJean, even Sainistril for the Commanders starts to open some eyes that he's just a good football player. He's a slot. I always say those guys bring the room together. You know what I mean? They just kind of complete your defense. Yeah, he could probably play some outside, but you don't want him doing that, snap after snap against Justin Jefferson. But he's really good at football, and in this type of draft and with those recent success, I bet he goes top 15.
He's a good football player.
Yeah.
I've got an opinion on Jahdae Barron. I'm lower on Jahdae Barron than most, and I'll tell you why, not because of how good of a football player he is, but more so projecting how the league is going to treat Jahdae Barron as a prospect. I want to get the rest of your top 5 cornerbacks, and we'll talk safety prospects for the NFL draft as well next. This episode of Peacock and Williamson brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before, because right now new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. And how about live bets and betting on a team to make a big comeback like we saw in what was the Arkansas game last night? Pick your favorites. If you got your eye on an underdog, FanDuel makes it easy to back them with spreads, totals, game props. The app is super easy to use. And when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around. Major League Baseball opening day was yesterday. Always a fun time of year for me. And of course, those NFL draft props as well at FanDuel and college hoops. So visit FanDuel.com to get in on all the college hoops action all tournament long. That is FanDuel.com. So Jahdae Barron, to me, and he was just a little short. And I put on the tape of Texas, and he's playing a lot of zone. I just think he's a nickel all day, and I think that's how the league is going to view him. Even though he ran 4.4 flat, and he's a good football player, absolutely. But I just don't know if he fits the profile for most teams as a man coverage outside type of a corner. And to me, his best fit would be as a nickel, maybe safety in the NFL, and one of those guys that can do a lot and drop him down and play him deep and, be that chess match. But as awesome as those types of players are, and as valuable as I think they are, the league doesn't value the middle of the field like that. They just don't.
No, they don't.
Paying him dollars or drafting him. And I don't see that Jahdae Barron is so markedly better a prospect as a nickel / safety than, and possibly play some outside corner, than Cooper DeJean was last year. He went 40. Brian Branch.
DeJean was definitely bigger.
Yeah, and Brian Branch was an easy evaluation the year before. He went 45. And so you're going to tell me that Jahdae Barron's going to go in the top 10 to 15 picks? I mean, I'm just not buying the league's value in that way. I like him a lot, but I just think he's probably going to be he's a 20 to 40 type of player in the end, and is a nickel / safety for me.
I can see that, especially to a playoff team that has a lot of pieces in place, and you just add them into the mix, kind of like Philadelphia did last year,
And they got rid of Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, right?
Yes, he went to the Texans.
I mean, how's that for a role for Jahdae Barron? Right?
Perfect. I mean, if he gets that far, he's talking. I don't think he gets that far, but because I don't think the first round is as good as last year. That's going to help him.
I didn't think Cooper DeJean would get to the Philadelphia Eagles in the second round either. And actually, didn't they trade up a couple spots for him too to make sure?
I think so. Yeah.
But So anyway, those are the top 2 guys. But it's an interesting class, and I just think that Jahdae Barron's more of a nickel, and if the league believes that, he's not going to go top 15.
Yeah, I just wonder if. We can spend the whole podcast doing it. Your point's dead on. I just wonder if the league finally says, well, maybe we should. You know what I mean? Right.
Like, you know what? We screwed up. Let's stop letting those guys fall into the second round. We should have drafted, and they should have. Like Cooper DeJean and Brian Branch should have gone. So
Zane Estrell too is a really good player. He's a little bit different. Right.
Yeah. The league's a little slow sometimes on the uptake on those things.
Very.
Very interesting prospect, number 3, Savone, I believe is how you pronounce it. Savone Ravel, East Carolina, all kinds of athleticism, but he's coming off a torn ACL, and he would have had an opportunity to put his name as the first corner potentially taken. I don't know what to do with him now.
I know, and I don't know what else to add to it except for he's great. I mean, I think he's a really, really good player, and I have a hard time finding negatives on the player except for the ACL. And we don't know anything more about it seems like.
In competition, East Carolina, which makes it a little bit more difficult for an evaluation. So, second round?
Senior Bowl would have been nice.
second roundish, right? A team's going to take a swing.
I think
you might end up with a superstar, and then you might end up with a guy who, kind of doesn't play his rookie year, and then slow starts his career, and maybe it's a Caleb Farley situation. I don't know, but really boomer bust to have a prospect there in Savone Ravel.
If he's the best pure corner in this draft, when it's all said and done, I'd be like, oh, I get it.
Yeah, could absolutely see that.
Yeah.
Who's 4 for you?
Maxwell Hairston. He's a little smaller, lighter than I love, but I also think that this corner class isn't loaded with prototypes. Takes the ball away, super fast. Plays pretty aggressively all in all. So I don't think most years he'd be my 4th corner, but he's good. I think he goes to the end of first round probably.
It's a little curious for me that Maxwell Hairston is a name barely anybody mentioned, and then he goes to the combine and goes, and was like, oh yeah, he's a first round guy. I was like, wait a second, wait. Nobody said that about Maxwell Hairston out of Memphis yesterday, and all of a sudden he's a first round lock. I'm not so sure. And he's pretty small too, 5'11", 183. And so another guy is like, I can see it, but then also I can see it go the other way as well.
I'm not sure I'm thrilled if that's my first round pick. If I'm the fan base, I'd be really happy with him at 50 overall. Sure.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Second round guy. And so, which probably helps the case of Will Johnson, Jahdae Barron, where there's so much questions after them at corner too. Like, well, we need a corner. We really feel good about this guy. Let's draft him here. Yeah. Good point. I kind of had a tie at number 5. Okay.
I almost put Trey Amos from Ole Miss there, but I went with Ezra Thomas from Florida State. Both guys have size. Thomas didn't run great. He doesn't look slow to me on tape, but I do think that he has some man traits, and some experience, which is, as we opened the show with, pretty rare.
Thomas ran 4.58 or something. Right?
It was bad.
Yeah, that's not good. And so that's going to hurt his stock. But if you like him, that just means he's going to fall to you a little bit later. If you ran 4.58, 4.60 at corner, goodbye top 50, maybe goodbye top 100. Are we talking to about him, the 4th round at some point now because of that 40 time? And again, all these prospects have a little something, which is probably why I'd go Trey Amos over him, just in the, seeing the measurables there.
We do a part 2 of this triple take series, and he won't be in my top 5 in round 2.
Yeah, it's
I'll probably put Harris or what's the Ole Miss kid ahead of him.
Yeah, Trey Amos.
Yeah.
Any favorite sleepers? Any other nearly missed your top 5?
We always do a sleeper on the first one. Zaw Frazier. You mentioned Pete Carroll corners, almost 6'3", UTSA guy. He reminds me of. In Seattle taking the mid rounds that worked out. The huge corner just a couple of years ago. He's their starter opposite. Yeah, he should know him. He's good.
The dude went crazy at the
Yeah. I don't know how we're both blanking on him, but he was my sleeper just because of traits. Jacob Parrish, I think, is a really good player out of Kansas State.
Yeah.
Benjamin Morrison's almost like Ravel, where this guy's been on every list for 3 years, but he's got recurring hip issues. That really scares me. I bet the league loves Darian Porter too. I might even put him at my number 5 corner.
Yeah. And if you look at the profile too, just physical profile, because everyone's talking about Maxwell Hairston, but Darian Porter's 6'3" and running the way he did at the combine. That's a very interesting one for me there.
Only a corner for 1 year, though. He was just switched it over. He's a great special teamer, wide receiver type. So a
high floor is what you're telling me as a special teams guy, and you don't have to draft him in the first top. You don't have to draft him in the top 50. He might sneak in the back half of the second round potentially.
Yeah. I mean, again, crazy trades.
That is the cornerbacks as ranked by Matt Williamson. You can find more details in the write-ups at Steelers.com. And, of course, we'll talk more about more sleepers and more corners, get deeper down the list as we get closer to the NFL draft. But it's time to talk safeties now in the safety class. Let's start with the top safety. Actually, let's start with your overall vibe of the safety class. And who's your number 1 guy?
I do think the top 2 dudes are very impressive and are deserved first-round picks. We've talked about this a lot. There's probably 50 different names that could end up in the first round, but Starks from Georgia and Enowari from South Carolina, to me, are very deserving to be in the top 32. I think there's a clear 3, and then after that, it's an okay group, special teamers, things wrong with them. I mean, I think it's a C plus safety class.
C plus safety class. Okay, let's get him in order then, according to Matt Williamson next. Real quick question before you give me your number one safety in this class. If Jahdae Barron, if I told you he's going to play safety day one and his whole career, safety, where would you rank him in this class?
3, because he's a little small for safeties. You know, I mean, now I write this in the write-up. Safeties almost need 3 different categories too. It used to be you're free or you're strong. I mean, we're both old enough to remember that. You're one or the other. You're Cam Chancellor or Earl Thomas.
Yeah.
Well, now are you slot capable? You know, I mean, people don't want Mike Hilton in the slot anymore. They want the 210-pound safety.
You know, now that we talk about this and look at it, and we've made a lot of references to the Legion of Boom and Pete Carroll, there's actually kind of a group of defensive backs for him to put that defense together. There's some deep safeties. There's some big-bodied, strong safeties. And there's some lengthy cornerbacks as well that might be better in zone than man. So
yeah, it could be a heavy defensive back Raider draft, and it should be. I mean, they need
some work to do there.
They do
for sure. Safety one for you is?
I like Stark slightly more than Anawarme, and I don't think that I killed his name. I apologize. And I don't think the South Carolina dude is just traits. I mean, I think he's a good football player too. There's a lot of good tape. He closes on the ball well. But I think Starks, who I know didn't test well, but all his drills, he was the best mile per hour guy. That shows up on the field. I think he's got a really good head for the game. I think he's more versatile. I can put him deep. He can lead it off or a defense. He could be a green dot guy if needed. You know, quality group around him, obviously, at Georgia. So I slightly prefer Starks than Anawarme.
Yeah, and Starks is the perfect example of what's the most important thing at safety. You know, 6'1", 200, he ran 4.5. Fine. I don't care.
Pretty good, right?
He could be bigger and faster, but what's going on in the processor upstairs? And Malachi Starks is so smooth. He can drop down and cover. He's got range on the back end. I love Malachi Starks. He's my number one safety as well in this class. Okay. E-Man Worry, though, is super interesting. When you're 6'3", 220 and run 4.3, like, you're a freak of nature. And the tape is pretty fun, even if there's still some work to do as far as his development goes. So I'm you shouldn't be shocked if he's the first safety off the board.
Again, I'm old enough to remember Javon Curse when he was the original freak. And since then, people throw the word freak around way too much for my liking, but this guy's a freak.
He's absolutely a freak. And he's not Taylor Mays, by the way, either.
No.
Who was like...
I don't think he's Isaiah Simmons either. You know, like, I'm not sure where to put him, you know.
Yeah, he can play in the box, but he's got range and he's, makes some plays on the football. Interesting player in Nick E-Man Worry. And my top 3 is exactly the same as yours. I love Xavier Watts. And again,
he really got,
he's kind of like the next, if you don't get Starks, he's very similar where it's like, man, instinctive. He can take the ball away. He's maybe not the biggest or fastest, but he's just a player, man. And I love Xavier Watts. I think he's a top 50 player for me. He might sneak into the 3rd round, though, just because he doesn't wow you physically.
Yeah, I'd be shocked if anybody had anyone different than their top 3. Put them in whatever order you want. Watts, I think, would be the consensus 3. But I think there's a pretty big drop-off after him. I don't know that we'll see a lot of day 2 safeties. I think Watts might be one of the only ones. But deep center fielder, I mean, back-to-back 2-time consensus All-American. Like, he's good at the game. He's got 12 picks, takes the ball away, leader. I mean, it doesn't wow you, as you said, athletically. But at safety, I care a little bit more from the neck up, and he's got it.
Absolutely. All right, here we go. We've got our Legion of Boom strong safety potentially on day 3 in Kevin Winston Jr., who's your number 4 safety out of Penn State. Pete Carroll's paying attention to this podcast, I think.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, he's size, and the problem is in week 2 he tore his ACL, so that's going to kill him, of course. But he's got long arms. He plays the run well. He's a really good tackler, not a bad man cover player, which a lot of these guys struggle with as we open to start the show. But what's the ACL situation? That's the big negative with the guy.
What kind of the wild card in this draft at safety, because not a lot of people are talking about him, and it's probably because of the ACL, and he didn't put much tape out there in his final season at Penn State. And, so it might be a little higher on some team boards and week 2 is probably early enough to where they got a pretty clear medical picture of what that ACL looks like right now before April.
I would think so. So maybe that it isn't a concern anymore. I don't know, but it would be nice to have more tape to go off of recently.
And who's your safety 5 in this class?
There's always one of these dudes that's a little short, but can play a lot at a big school. Billy Bowman from Oklahoma. I mean, he's not even 5'10", but he's pretty thickly built. I mean, he can play around the line of scrimmage. He can play the slot. He takes the ball away. I bet Sooner fans adore this guy, but is he a little too limited traits-wise to excel in the league? There's always a couple of these every year.
Yeah, and I think speed-wise, he's fine. Love the way he plays, but maybe a little too out of control as a tackler because he misses way too many tackles, and it's just the clearest negative. So he's not tall, and he misses too many tackles, which is why he's going to be a day 3 guy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure he'll be an awesome special teamer. I don't think he's going to be Buda Baker, but, I mean, people love him. I've heard that comp. I'm like, that's a little rich for me. But, and then after that, I kind of struggled with this group. I mean, to me, those were the 5, and it was pretty cut and dry. But then, Lathan Ransom from Ohio State. I kind of like Sanker from Virginia. Makuba, another Texas defensive back.
Yeah,
I'm kind of straining,
The reason maybe that they just didn't have Jahdae Barron playing safeties because they had Makuba, who's kind of like a version of that, and is like maybe a little undersized, not the biggest guy, but he will come and hit you, even though he's kind of slim and has some range at safety, could drop down and cover a little bit. Andrew Makuba is a really interesting one. He's kind of become one of my favorites, especially in the the 4th round region of this draft. And I wonder how high he will go just because he's not very big at safety. And NFL people love themselves some size, but I like the way he plays. He plays bigger and kind of profiles similarly, I think, in the NFL as his teammate Jahdae Barron does, actually.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. And they're both kind of glue guys that can do a lot for you, good from the neck up, all those type of things. I'd be shocked if he doesn't make it at the next level.
I totally agree. That is the safety class and the cornerbacks in the NFL draft, as Matt Williamson sees it, especially at the top. Let us know who your favorite sleepers are. If you agree or disagree, let us know. We're okay with that. And get those mailbag questions in for next week as well here on Peacock and Williamson at BD Peacock.
I'll be at the owners meeting next time we talk. Yeah.
Right. Owners meeting.
Yeah. So traveling tomorrow.
Ear to the ground for Matt Williamson.
It's a pretty cool environment. I mean, it's only the big wigs, so it's not like they tell you stuff, but it's a pretty cool environment. It's kind of an honor to go,
Some big trades going to come down next week.
Oh, right? Yeah, lots.
Got to be something. Come out of the voters meetings with at least one team that is traded out of the first round of the draft for whatever reason, right? We can't come out of the owners meetings with all 32 teams having first round picks.
Love it.
Thanks for making us your first listen. For your second listen, check out any of the podcasts, 200 of them, plus right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, including Locked On NFL Draft with Dame and Keith. And they're going to be with me and Matt when we do our Locked On Mock Draft Special, which is going to be coming to you very soon. We'll let you know the details on that and find out who all of your teams draft in what is an awesome undertaking and extravaganza here every year on the Locked On Podcast Network. Matt and I back Monday right here. Peacock and Williamson.